Hello, welcome to another episode of Unlocked. Today, Peter Stiepleman is going to introduce us to a leadership model that is quite deep in the idea of humans and people, which it should be. In this day and age, people are more important than ever. They always have been, but I think now we're putting more of an emphasis on that, and that is awesome. We talk about systems thinking, which is not necessarily people, but the systems are developed by the people that affect the people. And the systems he talks about are human-centered. So I think that is what the gold is in this interview. Stay tuned, because at the end, he drops he name drops somebody that I think you all know. And it's his aunt, and she is a pretty significant figure in American history. And I think that you should listen just for that part, especially so you can hear the gold that he got from that and the learning and the principles that he learned from that. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Peter. Peter is a recognized leader with engaging spaces, communities, different cultures. He worked at the United States Embassy in Madrid, Spain, corporate offices in San Francisco, Oakland, California. He was actually named Missouri Superintendent of the Year in 2021 and worked in that capacity for a number of years. His niche is superintendents. So if you're a superintendent out there, you should find his podcast. His podcast is called The Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. He also just released a book, An Imperfect Leader, Human-Centered Leadership in After Action. And we're going to talk about that a bit as well. So here we go, Peter. Let's get on with this interview. Peter, how are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I am good. We've had some really good conversation leading up to this. I thought we might as well just record.
That would be good to kind of hit the record button. Yeah.
Yeah.
For your listeners, what I've learned is that it's what sticky and humid where you are, and I'm glad
sticky and humid
to be there.
and I'm puzzled why it's not sticky and humid where you are, since
exactly. Well, right now we get the only sun of the year, so July and August are pretty wonderful in the Pacific Northwest. And then,
really, is it? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We get a lot of that in the Southeast, just pretty much all the time. So
I know. So rub it in. So you know what? Enjoy your stickiness. Enjoy it.
You know what? The fact that it's overcast today, I kind of feel like I'm living the Seattle life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
So it's awesome. Let's talk about this idea of you got this new book that came out. Your background is as a superintendent, and that's more your niche, all right? Is kind of you've got a podcast that talks to superintendents, but your model really spans all organizations. I love that you've niched into the superintendent space. That's where you come from, and you're really providing that value there. For my audience, it isn't just superintendents. Thought it was valuable to share this idea on the show. So I want to talk about that. Like, let's talk about, just briefly introduce where you came from and why you landed on this model, and then introduce the model to us.
Sure. So, I mean, just briefly, I was a teacher in Oakland, California, and then became an administrator, and then moved to the Midwest, Columbia, Missouri in particular. I have a background in insurance. I was an insurance agent. I have a background in diplomacy, working at the U.S. Embassy in Madrid, and got into education because I wanted to make a difference in a different way. And so then as I'm moving through, I thought I was a pretty good teacher in Oakland and in Missouri. And then I was promoted to become a principal of about 350 kids at a school. And then all of a sudden I became superintendent of a district with 3,000 employees, 19,000 kids, and was leading primarily through relationship. I think many of us who are in leadership, that's really that interpersonal piece is what our superpower is. And we are often put into positions because of our ability to connect with people and connect them to each other. And good things happen. And then all of a sudden we're responsible for teams and divisions, and we've got managers that we're trying to figure out how to support. And it really speaks to a need to have a better understanding of systems thinking. And so I learned that the hard way in terms of leadership at that level. 3,000 employees is a pretty big organization. And so I wrote a book following my 7 years as a superintendent to sort of look back on lessons learned. So the book is called An Imperfect Leader, Human-Centered Leadership in After Action. And that after action piece is such an important piece of leadership that I think most leaders sort of either know it's important but don't take the time to do it. And so that is that specific, what got overlooked on this decision I made, and what did I learn about relationships, and what frustrated me, and what could I have done differently, and in the end, what was something that was good that came out of it. So I took all of that and put it into a book that also introduces a leadership model that I don't believe has been seen anywhere else.
Cliffhanger. Should we end the show?
That's
let's
it,
just end,
right?
Let's just end
and
it
everyone's
right
all of a sudden going on Amazon.com. Peter Stiepleman, Imperfect Leader. Got to see this leadership model now.
That's it. We just did it. We blew it
That's
up.
Right.
Millions of sales. Oh God. Oh gosh.
Right.
Okay, man.
Trending now on
That's
X. Is that what it's called now? Twitter.
Something. I don't know. Yeah. Something like that. Give us the model. What's up? Give it to us.
So the model for human-centered, I call it school transformation, but really it can be for any organization. Looks at 3 dimensions. First of all, at the center is what any organization is trying to do, which is deeper leading and deeper learning, right? An organization that's constantly and continuously learning is an organization that is thriving. But there are these 3 dimensions, and you can enter it at any phase. And sometimes I talk about it from a perspective of I don't know, are you a hiker, Skot? Do you hike at all, or do you go camping? I'm going to say no.
I don't frequently hike, but I just did hike in the Alps about two. Well,
look at you.
3 weeks ago. It was amazing.
I bet it was amazing. Well, I'm from Long Island originally, so we don't really go camping. But I will tell you that when I started dating now my wife, but we started dating. She wanted to go backcountry camping, and so there are these things called trailheads, right? That's the beginning of a trail. So, and I will tell you, we were walking on these trails and saw these voles that are like mice or I don't know, rats or something that run across. And I was like, they have a real rodent problem here, which truly kind of presented that I was the problem, not them. Anyhow, so this model at the center is deep learning and deep leading. And there are these 3 sort of entry points or trailheads. That was the reason for the story. The trailheads to this. And so one is collective aspiration. And that's the heart of the work that you do as an organization. It says, what do we want to create together? And how do we want to be together? 2 really important questions that come from Peter Senge's work on systems thinking. Peter Senge, who wrote The 5th Discipline, super master guru in this work. And what do we want to create together? Is any leader knows that when they're doing this work, they have to do it with people, not at them or to them. So collective aspiration has all these different components to it. The second dimension is nested patterns. And that really is the muscle of an organization's work. It speaks to how do we behave, right? So shared leadership, empathy and compassion, high levels of collaboration, creativity and curiosity, right? That's just another word for innovation, right? So organizations are constantly trying to get better and innovate and do things in a more effective and efficient way. That speaks to their curiosity and the willingness to ask questions. And then the last dimension is the leader's learning work. And that really is the mind of the work. And it speaks to things like serving as a lead learner. And that's super important. If you look at the Harvard Business Review, if you look at any of these sort of publications that are coming out, Forbes, they talk about the value and the power in being vulnerable. So when you serve as a lead learner, you're willing to say, I made a mistake. And we're going to make a mid-course correction to sort of fix that and do better as an organization. It also speaks to the willingness to harvest the collective wisdom of your internal system and your external system. So if you've got managers who are listening or leaders who are considering, they have to interact with the public to get a better idea on how to make their products better, it's understanding all of that piece of harvesting the collective wisdom internally and externally. And then finally, just being thoughtful and mindful of system design and then system thinking. And they all lead to a culture of deeper leading and deeper learning.
So a couple of things you said at the end
Yeah.
there were interesting to me because
Nothing from the
I'm
beginning. The
nah, I don't.
metaphor
The
of
beginning was garbage,
that
so I'm just that.
the hiking
No,
metaphor. For those who are just listening, I can tell you Scott's face was like, "Where's he going with this
no,
story?"
no, no. I love that you're connecting it to that because I think that a lot of people will understand that. So, but what? No, just because it was the last thing you said. So,
Yeah. Okay.
primacy recency principle stuck in
Gotcha.
there a little bit. So it's this idea that so I'm reading this book. And it's about a new kind of diversity, which he's talking about multi-generational workforce. I talk a lot about that with my audiences as well. But working in a culture of multi-generational ideas and how there's a gap, right, and a huge gap with we've got older generations and we've got like the Gen Zs, but the Gen Zs they're seen as wanting this mentorship model a bit more than the millennials did.
Mm,
And respecting that older generation, wanting that wisdom from some of the older generation. Now, there's still a big disconnect there. Now, we're coming from this industrial age of, and you said it, it's all of a sudden, instead of I know best, it's harvesting collective wisdom. It's how do we pull for the best from everybody instead of, hey, I'm the leader. Hey, I'm the one who's been here forever. I know best. Just do what I say. Okay.
right.
So there's that mind shift that's taking a new place in the workforce. And then the second thing that you said was, hey, vulnerability, instead of saying, hey, I messed up, I'm owning it. But it was, hey, I don't mess up. Like it's this
That's right.
wall, this I
Right.
am
There was
this.
this sort of understanding that you were supposed to be so confident it is this shift in an organizational culture to a more vulnerable one is exactly what you're describing, is exactly what needs to be happening, because there has been a generational shift, as you mentioned, in terms of how people approach work and their colleagues, and those who sort of lead with arrogance and this sort of false confidence, right? As I'm the
Mhm.
perfect leader, usually find that people will say, I'm right behind you. And then they look back and they go, well, how far behind me are you? Because there's no one there, right? A
Mhm.
vulnerable leader has people linked arm in arm with them, and
Yeah,
they're moving forward together.
yeah, yeah. I love that. There's I was doing a session with a team that I'm coaching right now, and they just had a reorg in their company, and I'm talking to them, and there's about 40 to 50 leaders on this call, plus the CRO who was over all of these leaders. All these leaders are a little bit in shock. They're trying to understand what's going on with their teams and with their people, and trying to make sure they're taken care of. Yet they're wondering what's going on with me. And I was talking about self-preservation and the idea of change and how do we manage change in an organization. And we just had this reorg like yesterday, and how are we doing that now? And I put this CRO on the spot because I've worked with him over the past couple of years. He's a super humble leader and has a huge loyal following. And I said, hey, Roger, we'll just call him Roger.
Yeah.
Tell
Roger.
me about
Typical
your
Roger.
it's always a Roger. Tell me about your self-preservation right now as you were thinking about this reorg and where you were coming from. And the vulnerability, the wall just came down. He said, to be honest, I was worried about my own credibility in this role. Like, I'm coming in, I'm kind of new with this role, and I was wondering about my own credibility in this and what's everybody thinking about me. And he's saying this in front of 50 of his people that he leads that all report to him. And
What a
that's the
way to
vulnerability
model.
that was
Yeah.
going.
What a way to model that. Yeah. That's really a powerful story.
It was
Sometimes
cool.
I get asked, okay, well, I want to be more vulnerable. I want to be less impulsive when making decisions. Sometimes leaders find that when they enter a room with their teams, that the whole team just looks at them to make the decision, and they want to shift that culture within their team to be more collaborative, but they're just not sure how to do that. And I was talking with a client just the other day. She is from Egypt originally, and she's working in the Netherlands, and just really trying to figure out how to create a collaborative model, or at least a way to a process so that everybody's voice is heard. And so what I shared with her is this tool. It's simple. Look, listen, learn, lead. Look is anybody on the team brings an issue that's going on and says, look, I've got this problem of practice I'm trying to figure out. And nobody interrupts. They just say, look, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Listen, I'm now going to tell you all about what is happening and what I've done. And once that person has stopped, then the learn period has begun. And everybody has the opportunity to ask questions. So there's an expectation that there's going to be a ton of inquiry. So this is not judgmental, but it is the opportunity to say, what's this decision going to look like a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? What perspectives have we maybe missed in terms of making the decision? Who's not in the room right now? We're going to make this decision. We're going to expect that there are going to be results, but it may not be immediate. How will we manage the tension between decision and results? All those kinds of important questions that don't always get answered, and then teams are scrambling to try to figure out how to fix it. And then the last part is lead, right? So they've now sort of made a decision as a team. Now, no longer just that one person's making the decision. They've done it together. And so often, I'm sure leaders who are listening have experienced this. The team has made a decision, but they haven't actually talked about how are we going to communicate it? How will we check in on to see how it's working? So that's the lead part. So who's communicating it? How we're going to make sure that we're attending to people? And as you described your CRO who had the opportunity to say, I wasn't sure how my own credibility was going to look on this decision, right? That opportunity to come and bring people together. So just a tool for those who are listening who might be thinking, I want to do that, but how might I do that?
Okay. Let's talk about this systems thinking idea because you're introducing this. Systems thinking, some people are like, I'm down with systems. I'm pretty cool with that sounds fun. And I like to be systems thinker. And there's other people that are like, yeah, systems are cool. I'm not great at them. I don't understand how all the stuff comes together and all that. So introduce this idea.
I so appreciate it because I like so many, was scared of just that term systems dynamics, right? Or systems thinking or system design. It is sometimes an intimidating even concept. But I would urge those who are listening to check out an organization called the Water Center for Systems Thinking. They have an incredible website. You will not regret it. They have these systems of thinking cards, which is a great way to start these habits. And I don't work for them. I'm just telling you this, what helped me as a leader, because these habits of systems thinking cards allow you to slow down a bit and then think about the decisions that you're making. Everything from perspective. So who needs to be in the room right now, or who are we making this decision with? Because sometimes as leaders, we forget that we make decisions. We have to make decisions with the people most impacted by that decision. Sometimes we make these decisions at a certain level and we haven't even considered really what that's going to be like for those who are impacted by that decision. Or one is leverage points. So what small action could I possibly take that is going to give me some of the results that I might want? A behavior over time graph. That's a systems thinking tool. It says, okay, I'm going to map out behaviors over time and it will kind of reveal to me what's going on in my organization. So there may be hiring practices within an organization. There may be morale issues that certain times of the year that there's low morale, or there's certain times of the year where there's great hope and anticipation. Certainly if you're an organization that does bonuses and those types of things, that's a really stressful time. So mapping out for the year, sort of thinking about what that's going to look like is a systems thinking tool. Archetypes. So archetypes are just stories. And one really good one when thinking about systems thinking is the accidental adversary. So how many times have you been working two departments, sort of working in parallel to each other, working towards a similar goal, right? Complementary goals, but sometimes working at odds with each other, and then just things keep getting stuck, right? You're accidental adversaries. And so there's a whole way of sort of thinking about where are things going wrong and how I might fix it. That's all systems thinking. And I don't think we do enough as leaders to kind of consider the systems will create exactly what they were designed to create. So anything that's being generated by your system, low sales, high turnover, that's a symptom of your system. So being able to kind of look through your system and saying, okay, this is what we're experiencing. What adjustments might we need to make, and how will we document them? And then how will we know whether they're working? That's systems thinking.
Symptoms of your system. So that's the thing, is we have symptoms when we're ill, runny nose, headaches, whatever. But that's not the core issue. So how do we get
interesting to use the power of language
to,
that's interesting, because, your body is an organism and you treat it in certain ways. And so is your organization. It's an organism and it thrives based on certain ways that you treat it. And you have to attend to the systems within your own organization, just like you do with your own organism. And wow, that's an interesting metaphor. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's
oh
awesome.
My God, look, a bill just came up on my screen. All right, let me write Skot, Waldron. All right, hold on.
$12. Yeah. No, I think that's great, and I think that these conversations are all about how do we bridge these gaps that are happening in our thinking. And I think if we come back to this idea of, okay, so if we build a system, there's a process. Systems to me says process. Systems to me says efficiency. It says all those types of things. And if we can get down to the core root of some of those issues, then we'll understand why our system isn't, why our system's probably failing us. Which in the end is going to fail our people, which in the end is we're just going to fail.
That's interesting.
As a company, right?
There's a classic systems thinking tool called a stock and flow map. And those who are very familiar with system dynamics and systems design know what they are. Basically, it's just a stock is anything you're trying to fill. So we're trying to increase the number of customers we have. We're trying to increase revenue that we bring in. We're trying to decrease burnout. We're trying to increase retention. Whatever it is, that's your stock. And flow is all the actions we're taking to get that stock to increase or decrease, depending on. And then on the other side of your stock is, well, here are the things that are happening and why we're losing customers, right? So, you may have a great sales team. So that's filling your stock in terms of potential customers. And then you find out that the technical team is not returning calls or not returning emails or is dismissive to the concerns of a customer. And so they leave. Right. And so it's just looking at your system in a way, as you just said, looking at your processes, and it goes deeper into looking at the people who are responsible for those processes to see whether or not we're having the success that we want to have.
Okay, good. Let's go back to collective aspiration. Let's go back to this beginning thing. Like, why do you focus? So why these three though? Why collective aspiration, nested patterns, and, leaders learning work? Like, what is why those things? Give me an example of each three, or give me talk to each one.
Sure. So collective aspiration, right? The heart of the work. When you are creating a company or you are responsible for a division, you want to be really clear on what it is you're trying to achieve. So collective aspiration says, what are we trying to create together? What's our compelling purpose? Why are we here? Right? Each of us has this sort of moral focus, why we do the work that we do and how we live our lives. Compelling purpose is sort of the mission of whether it's a whole organization or a division. Then there's a component in there, shared images of success. So are we all on the same page about what it is we're trying to achieve? Because when we say we want customer satisfaction, what does that mean? That they just, sign a contract the next year with us? Is that satisfaction? Or is it that that they have such a brand loyalty to us because we've continued to check in with them throughout the year, right? Skot, I know that you are considering writing a book, right? That is so exciting to me, and I know for your listeners. So I hope I'm not betraying anything that you said.
No way, man. But now I have to do it.
Now you have to
finish it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So now you have there's an accountability piece. However, we talked about the value of checking in with people throughout the year, because that builds loyalty to whatever it is that they're trying to create, right? Themselves and collectively. So having a shared image. Under there's also something called an ethic of excellence. Not ethics, right? It's not an ethos. It's an ethic, meaning do you document the process that you went through to get to your final product? So, you may have a client who does advertising, and you see their final product and you go, wow, that's amazing. But they don't talk about or show you all the iterations that took to get there. Well, every business leader who's listening, or a leader in schools or wherever, have this sort of documented process to get to where they went to. So an ethic of excellence. So are we willing to keep going back to the drawing board and going through this iterative process to get to where we want to go to? So why is it important? Because, I mean, every organization is split into the heart, the muscle, and the mind of the work that we do. And so this model sort of just divides it up into these really logical ways of saying, okay, collective aspiration. Nested patterns is, look, as an organization, we need to know how, who we are and how we behave, because it's the way that we recruit people and when we make decisions about whether we're going to retain them. So an example I'll give you, though, I became a new CEO, and I had talked with a Baldrige Award winner, right? Baldrige Award, huge industry recognized award, really hard to achieve. And he said, you got to go in there and you got to share with them what the values of the organization are, because it's going to be the decision you make about whether you retain people or what, and when you're recruiting them. So I sort of marched up and said to the, I think 200 leaders who were assembled that day, almost like Moses at Mount Sinai, here are our 8 values, right? And I listed them off. And then about 2 years later, there was a lawsuit within the system that was sort of dividing people's loyalties. It was really uncomfortable. It was upsetting to many. And I remember turning to a leader in the system and saying, oh, we have these values. And she said, no, those are your values. They're not our values. I mean, in that moment, it was the most profound learning, and I was embarrassed. And so we went through a whole process of saying, okay, wait, let's get back to nested patterns. Who are we? And so we brought in student voice, custodians, secretaries, principals, assistant principals, teacher voice, counselors, nurses, everybody had representation, about 200 people in a room. And we went through this really thoughtful process of deciding what are our values. And it was just, I'm happy to talk about it, but it would take, a little bit of time. So, somebody can find me offline and say, tell me about that process, or, read the book. How about that? And it's in the book. How about that? And it's a really thoughtful way of getting to a collective, harvesting the collective wisdom to get to who you are in terms of how you'll behave. So why is it important? I think everybody's looking for a leadership model that is intuitive, that makes sense. And at the same time is not off-putting and is steeped in good research that's been done around this work.
Well, it sounds like it's focused on people. I mean, it sounds like
Human-centered.
It's really, it's human-centered, right? It's like this thing that because people are what make the whole thing happen. Anyway, if we focus on the people, the health of the people and alignment, because that's what I hear with you. A lot of what you're saying is all about alignment. Are we aligned? Are we all going the same direction?
Right. Are we cohesive?
Rowing the same boat, same direction kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And so the model serves as a rudder, right? To make sure that you're not falling off course.
That's cool. Tell me about this national icon. This, you teased me with this national icon person.
Yeah.
Tell me about this person. Who is it?
Yeah. So in my book, An Imperfect Leader, Human-Centered Leadership and After Action, I write about my Uncle Martin and my Aunt Ruth, or as most people came to call her, RBG. So Justice Ginsburg was my aunt. And so, I've learned a lot from my family, my Uncle Bob, my Aunt Linda, my Aunts Sue and Bernice, my parents, right? But from my aunt, I learned a great many things about gender equality, certainly, about fairness, and about change. And she once sent me a note with what has now become a fairly famous quote, that real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. And so, she's so right. I mean, no matter how much leaders work to agitate their systems to change, they will find that their systems will work aggressively to return to status quo, right? How many managers who are driving right now or listen on and are thinking about the changes they tried to make within their system and how they just didn't stick because the system likes status quo. Those who have thrived in that system like status quo. They're not interested in change. So, status quo is predictable. And those who have benefited from it don't really want it to change. So, I'm certainly could give you an example from the school district if you're interested. And happy to do that. But that's really why I teased you, because I thought it was kind of interesting, and what I learned from her.
Wow. So, like, are we talking aunt? Like, we went over to my aunt's house and had like Thanksgiving dinner.
Thanksgiving dinner. Actually, she came to us. Yeah.
She came. Okay.
Yeah. 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 And for many years, I had to go pick her up at the airport because she was very thoughtful about the U.S. Marshals who protected her, right? So she'd want them to be able to go to Thanksgiving with their families. So I'd pick her up at the airport. But then, you sit in a lot of New York traffic. So there did come a time where then she had to drive her to the house.
Yeah. Wow. What an experience. I mean, a journey of learning that you could have gathered from her and the impact she's made on the country and just humanity as a whole. I mean, as she was honored and respected amongst a lot of people. That's pretty cool.
She was able to navigate different political perspectives in such a genuine, thoughtful, and respectful way. The fact that she and Justice Scalia were such close friends is pretty meaningful, and certainly served as a model for me as I was navigating a school district in a university town, 300 square miles, rural, suburban, urban, many different perspectives being brought forward. And certainly during the global pandemic, where you had very, very split decisions down the middle about what was the appropriate way to sort of approach the pandemic. And in the state where I was leading, it was left to local control. And so there was very little executive direction, right? So in Georgia, it may have been different. Connecticut certainly was. New York was. Missouri was local control. And so that left it to locally elected school boards and their superintendents to sort of navigate and to interpret guidance and to figure it out. So I drew on her wisdom and her willingness to try to find common ground.
That, I'm sure that's a whole book in and of itself.
Look, I just wrote one. I think I'm good.
Yeah, you done. That was it. Your legacy. Your legacy. Yeah. Okay. Until you go, well, maybe I will write it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I'm now sending you $12.
There you go. Peter, this is awesome. You got such a great energy to you, and you're just so approachable. And I hope people feel that when they work with you, and just that your ideas. I like the way you package them, and I hope people will take that and do something with it. Where can people find out about you or get more information from you? How do they do that?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. And I know you have devoted listening, and just to be included among your other guests is a true honor. So Scott, thank you so much. You can find me, the book can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere. So Human-Centered Leadership, An Imperfect Leader, Human-Centered Leadership in After Action. And my podcast, I do a weekly show where I interview superintendents from around the country and ask them to deconstruct a decision that they made. And that is found on any podcast platform. Or if it's hard to find me, just go to peterstiepleman.com. And Stiepleman was, I don't know what it was before they came through Ellis Island. That was the simplified, so Stiepleman. But it's Stiepleman, so peterstiepleman.com. And would love to follow up with anybody. Beautiful.
Peter, enjoy your sunshine up in the Seattle area. I hope that you don't take it for granted.
No, exactly. That's why I'm glad we're doing this early in the day here, so I can go enjoy just a little bit of sunshine today.
There you go. All right, buddy.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks. Real change happens one step at a time. And I love this idea too about how systems like the status quo. If we aren't intentional and if we aren't consistent and if we aren't, holding to those things, if we don't have buy-in, if we don't have alignment, your systems are just going to default to the easiest, most comfortable form. And change isn't comfortable. And if change is happening, that means we're experiencing discomfort, which means we're just going to revert back to the comfort part of no change, which is not how we grow. So I love that principle. So let's talk about his 3 pillars now: collective aspiration, nested patterns, and leaders learning. And lead learners is something that was a little bit interesting to me, this idea of lead learner. I want to be the lead learner. I want to be the one that is setting the example for what it's like to lead inside my organization and also learn. And I hope people are getting that. So the collective aspiration, alignment, and then nested patterns. How are we behaving? Is it true with who we are, our values, somebody else's values? Are they my values? Are they the top 3 people of the company's values? Those 3 principles are really valid for all of us. And I hope that we're going to take all of that to heart. Please go out, find Peter. This interview with Peter, super approachable guy, super fun to talk to. A lot of good energy going on there. I hope you got that in this interview as well. If you want to find out more about me, you can go to skotwaldron.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, find me on the podcast platforms, all of them, and go to my website where you'll find more of these interviews. I would really, really appreciate it. And until next time, I hope to see you here on another episode. Wow, I'm having a hard time getting this out. I hope to see you on another episode of Unlocked. See ya.